Alright, well this is Squire coming to you guys for the Deck Building with the Squire show. Tonight we're going to be talking about the latest patch update, the 8.2.1. We're going to talk about some, I kind of got a little bored. There wasn't a whole lot going on the forum, so I went over to some of the other TCG forums and did a little bit of trolling over there. And I'm going to go over a deck doctor with the Mastrfett Flyin Rhino deck that he submitted to me. I think this is another one that came to me before Christmas, and then we're all caught up to things that happened in 2014. I've had a couple of decks submitted to me since then, so those will be the next decks that we're going to see. So let's go ahead and just jump right in here and pull up some of the patch notes that we saw. So first thing I'm going to pull up is actually we had a quick note before we go over to the patch notes. We'll go ahead and zoom in on this, nice and get that nice and big, and it just talks about some of the different things that they're going through and how it is that it's a little bit frustrating. They really appreciate us to bug, basically we're doing a lot of the bug testing as alpha testers right now, helping them out with their game, and they it's just, it would be really bad if we didn't stress test it properly enough and then it came to like beta or after beta and then they find out, like, for instance, at 1,000 users their tournament client crashes or something like that. So bear with them. We just had the tournament client come on online yesterday, as a lot of people know, and when we got to a certain saturation point it wasn't launching tournaments at all, and so unfortunately I wasn't able to do that at all. Chris Woods also spoke last November. I'll just remind people what he was talking about back then is that we are running the client on really low hardware, really low-end hardware right now, and the reason why they're doing that specifically is so that they can update, so that way they can work on making sure that the software is optimized to the fullest potential that it can be, so that way in the future when we put it on the nice hardware it'll work even better, and there'll be slim to no chance that it we'll get a lot of these freezes and crashes and priority bugs and a lot of the other things that we've run into. And he's talking about some art that we're seeing, some squirrels and dinosaurs arts here. So let's go over the patch notes that break down here. So we'll just go ahead and zoom in on this. And a lot of different things are going on here. The biggest thing is the sealed deck tournaments, and so for everyone that doesn't know exactly what this is 6 packs of cards that you get dealt, so we get to see some of the randomization in there. And with those packs you have to build a 40 card deck. Now typically it talks about this in the article, but typically when you're building a 40 card deck you want to keep it at 40 or 41 cards with about between 16 and 18 resources depending on what your resource curve is for the decks. You want to find the best the best colors or the best shard colors for your deck, and we saw that yesterday a little bit when I was going over some of my pools. For instance, I had in Diamond I had like 3 inner conflicts, for instance, but the rest of my shard wasn't good enough to support me going into that, whereas the other shards were better, for instance. So it takes a lot more tactics. It's a completely different way to look at the game, and it's another skill set that people have that's completely separate from people that are good at doing just constructed play. And of course the next echelon above that is going to be drafts when those come out, and those are going to be coming out pretty soon. Some other fixes in the games, they added some more sounds, they added 3 new cards which we're going to talk about. They finally fixed Farney, so apparently he works, except that down here he doesn't work, I guess, not working correctly for artifacts that are created, I guess. So he works, but he doesn't work with created artifacts, so they got to fix that later. Some other things, yeah, Runeer Commander, if he gets created by Izumi, he just dies immediately, no matter, even though Izumi counts as a shin hair. Kind of funny, actually. I think actually he shouldn't die immediately because he's a shin hair, so he should be a 1/1, even if Izumi got killed in response or something. Just some various different things got fixed is what they're showing up here. Now we're going to go over some of the cards. So we got Inquisition here. I'll go ahead and zoom this back because that's a little bit that's retarded big right there. So Inquisition, target opposing champion reveals their hand, choose a non-resource card from it, and they discard that card. Now we've seen this card a lot in Magic the Gathering, obviously. This is a card that is very flavorful for blood or black type that type of shard, and so this is a card that it's like a no-brainer really, and it's got the 2 threshold on it, so it's prohibitive that way. It's a basic action, so you have to do it on your turn. So your opponent, if they're drawing cards and playing them, this card is less relevant. It also doesn't work on resources, so you can't just snipe those resources out of your opponent's hand and make it so they can't play any cards. So it's not really that overpowered. It just basically stops things before they can hit the board. So we could get rid of like Fist of Brigadon. It's kind of really a big deal for that, or and a lot of the other big fat drops for like that deck. Or maybe if your opponent's playing control and you get to turn 2 and you play this card, you might snipe out like that Uranaz or something like that, something to that extent, or maybe even like Argus out of that control player's hand. You know, it's very, very good to snipe those really big threats out of your opponent's hand. And so, you know, this is definitely a good card. You know, it's a sideboard card. It's a main deck card. You could main deck it. Not, you know, really, really good card. Survival of the Fittest. This is actually a card I had to think about it for a little while, but you know, it's quick action. A troop that I control battles another troop. Another card that's very flavorful for Wild. And we've seen this also in Magic as well. A card that is easily splashable at 1 threshold and with the total cost of 2, and this is going to be very, very helpful because the removal in Wild was very, very light. Now this still has the problem of requiring us to have a troop in play already, so it's not quite as good as like a burn spell or a murder or something else, because in an open board state you can use those no matter what, whereas this card does nothing for you if you don't at least have 1 troop in play. So if your opponent like sweeps you out and then you happen to draw into Survival of Fitness and you need to play it, well, you don't have a troop to use it with, so you're not in a position to use it. So it has that equalizer side of the card. So very, very flavorful card for Wild. We actually saw this with a gem where it was the like Battle Beetle. You'd be able to put that on there and then it could battle a troop when it came into play, and luckily Cryptozoic decided that was going to be maybe a little bit too overpowered, and so they actually pulled that gem before it saw production. Moving on, we got Shrewd Manipulation. It says choose and discard 2 cards, ready or exhaust target artifact or troop. Now I talked a little bit about this yesterday when I saw this. This just screams out combo to me. It's a constant that's going to sit on the board. They actually pointed out in here that you could take Dro's Walker, the 8/8 that has to attack, and it's an artifact creature. In order to untap it, you have to pay 8 life. Well, this allows you to discard 2 cards and then just ready it. So this is another way to do that. Maybe it's not as good as what is it called? The artifact. I forget what the artifact is called. The one that basically readies artifacts. There's a 1-cost artifact that allows you to ready artifacts. And I'm having a brain fart right now. Maybe not as good as that necessarily, because you have to discard 2 cards to do that, but it does allow you to do any troop with it as well. So very, very much a thing. Okay, so I'm seeing in my chat Survival of Fittest is bugged, so you can select 2 cards from your opponent and make them battle instead of selecting one of your own. Okay, well that's good to know. So if you are playing this card, you know, and this just goes without saying, if you're playing these cards and you know how they're supposed to work, but you know you could also exploit them, please don't exploit them. Just bug report it and move on with your day. You know, obviously sometimes when you got a gem and it's going to activate even though you have threshold for it, well, you might as well just play the troop unless you're in some sort of tournament setting. In that case, it's you know, it's kind of one of those things. But like in the case where it's just pure exploitation, like in the case of if I had 2 of my opponent's troops kill each other with Survival of Fitness, well, that's obviously not what they intended, and it's just not coded properly. Moving on, it talks about Sealed and like the basic idea behind Sealed, which we just talked about. Another thing that's interesting is in pre-releases. So in Sealed tournaments, you know, real Sealed tournaments, you basically get your card pool, you register your whole card pool, you write everything down, and then what you do is you write down exactly what your deck's going to be, and your deck always has to return to that. but when it's a pre-release tournament, you can change your deck all day and it never has to be the same, which is pretty neat. They allow that for that to happen. So it'll be interesting to see if Cryptozoic does the same thing with their pre-releases. So they'll have like a different like sealed style, so that way you can change your deck. Like say it is that you just feel like you were rushed a little bit and you see that one of your shards was a lot more powerful. You could side that whole shard out and not have to play with the bad shard for the rest of the day, which would be a pretty positive thing. I think that's a positive play experience, and I would encourage Cryptozoic to implement that for pre-release type tournaments, not for any tournament after that's sealed. Of course, sealed typically mostly just sees play in the pre-release setting, and maybe for like Pro Tour qualifiers sometimes you'll see sealed, but more often than not you're going to see a lot more draft, because draft is a lot more controllable. You can do things like draft a single shard, whereas in sealed you're usually going to have to play two, which is going to make your deck a little bit more clunky. So he's explaining more about how to sealed and how to draft, and these are articles that are going to be gone over multiple times by different people. The biggest problem with sealed is that your card pool is what it is. You had no control over it really, so that's why it's one of those formats where it should be low stress for a lot of people, and it's just you look at your card pool, you play the best cards you have, and you see what happens. Whereas with draft there's a lot more skill involved. Now obviously there's a lot of skill in sealed as well, when it is that you're looking at your card pool and you're choosing the best shard for you. You're not necessarily just saying, well, I have this Baneslayer, for instance, or some sort of or Urnaz, or I have something that says I have to play this card even though like none of the other cards support it. In that case, what's going to happen to you likely, because I've done this myself, I had Baneslayer in my sealed, for instance, and I didn't see Baneslayer like all day in 40 cards. Like I saw her like, and the times when I did see her, she got answered right away. She got killed right away, and so she was not very relevant for me. So that's a lot of times what happens when you draft just around a single card. So draft or even play your sealed deck around a single card. So definitely look at all the strong cards within a shard when you're making those decisions. Also talking about the reconnection. That was a problem for a while, where people were disconnecting from games and their client would crash or something, and then they come back and then they either get a loss or something, or they lose their tournament. So you should be able to reconnect now, and I actually consider that I kind of experienced this yesterday, the reconnection, because I signed up for my tournament and I probably screwed things up. Then I went and played an AI game while I was still signed up for the tournament and came back, and then it pushed me into the tournament. So I'm not sure if they've designed that in such a way that you'll be able to do that effectively, or if it's going to queue you in there. So I might try that later, where I'll queue myself up and then go and try to build a deck while I'm waiting in queue, and see if it automatically just shoves me over once it is that the queue is filled. Talks about the prep phase coming back. We talked about that last week, and I've seen some people that got really angry about it. But the big thing is, look at what they did. They're trying different things out with alpha. It doesn't have to stay. They obviously brought it back. They listened to people's opinions, and people made good arguments. They didn't just say, well, this sucks. They gave good feedback. And so that's the thing is that you need to do, if it is that when we're making these changes and doing things, you feel like maybe this card is a little bit more too powerful, or maybe this should be a quick action instead of a basic action. Start posting on these forums and letting them know right now. Because after it is that we're probably in beta, I would think that there's probably not going to be that many card changes, and definitely after we come out of beta there will be no card changes. I can't see any card changes coming. Overwhelmingly, I've on a forum post a while back, before this game was anywhere close to where it is now, I asked people what they would prefer. Would they prefer to errata a card, or ban it, or restrict it, ban, restrict, or errata a card? And errata just simply means we're going to change the text on the card, changing the way it works, usually nerfing it. And overwhelmingly people were more in favor of nerfing a card, or not nerfing a card, but banning or restricting a card to a certain format. Because it depreciates the card. It would it hurts the financial secondary market, and it does a lot of negative things, which would be negative play aspects for a lot of people. And so it would be best to simply ban it out and put it in maybe a certain format where it's playable, like a legacy format or like a type 1 format. So that is all I had right there. So I'm just going to go on and just talk about something really quick before I go to the deck doctor here. So I trolled a couple of forums. I'm not gonna lie. I look at some of the other card playing forums just to see how they're doing, see what people are talking about, see what they're what they like about the games, what they're complaining about. And so of course I went over to the Hearthstone forums, and they were complaining a little bit about the chat system. So you know, I feel like that needs some work, and so I really appreciate that Cryptozoic has put a lot of work into the current chat system that we have right now, and that they've focused on that. I've played in some other alphas and betas, and on MMOs and different things, and it seems like a lot of times the chat systems are lagging way behind a lot of other things, or like guild chat, or like guild functionality, or a lot of other things, crafting, etc. And so Cryptozoic is trying really hard to implement a lot of these features, so that way by the time we're done with beta, we should hopefully have, you know, a PvE dungeon. We should hopefully have crafting in the game. We should hopefully have some sort of auction house in the game, and we'll also probably have you know, well, obviously we're going to have competitive matches as well. If you look at Hearthstone, it's still in beta. A lot of games are still in their beta phase, and so there's a very good chance that once we get into open beta, that this game's going to be in open beta for up to a full year or more, looking at a lot of other games, which is perfectly fine, because open beta is basically like the game's almost on the market anyways, and so people can start spending money on it, which will start generating revenue, supporting the company making the game. So those are all good things. Another thing I looked at was I went over to the Magic the Gathering forums, and something that really turned me off personally to Magic the Gathering last year when I discovered Hex, when my brother told me about Hex, was during the Modern Masters time frame, when that set was coming out. I was getting really excited about it. I was like, all right, I can finally get some of the things I need to play Modern a little bit more effectively, and it's not going to cost as much. But unfortunately, they MSRP'd it at a certain rate, and then it basically got price gouged across all of the brick and mortar stores. And I don't really blame them necessarily, because they have to support a store. They're not making a whole lot, but there was a brick and mortar post on the Magic forums, and I posted a couple of times on there, and they talk about some of the different things going on. But to me, it seemed like a lot of the problems that they're having are coming from the company that's supplying them with the product. Like, for instance, they have 4 sealed decks, and they have one that's really powerful, and that's the only one that sells, and the other ones will sell eventually, but the one that sells the most basically just gets price gouged. It basically, instead of them selling it for whatever it is, like $25, they sell it for $75. And the reasoning is, when they buy the decks, they cost a certain price, and then if they don't sell like 3 of the decks, and they're not even close to coming out on you know, with like $5 in their pocket, and that's just not even sustainable. So for a brick and mortar store. He also pointed out a lot of other things, and so I'm just looking to the future as someone that was also planning on possibly like opening up a brick and mortar store. Of course, those plans have changed. It just doesn't look, the future looks bleak for a lot of that type of thing to me in the future, especially when a lot of these other digital TCGs taking market share, where it is that parents and, you know, older people like myself won't have to go out to the store, drive out there on a Friday night, leave their kids, and then, you know, they're in trouble with their wife or whatever, and you know, I can play at any point in time. I don't have to schedule a specific time. It's another reason why it is that I feel the same reason is why it is that Netflix and a lot of these other on-demand things are doing really well, and I think that television eventually is probably going to peter off, because, you know, people want to do things on their own time frame, and when it's convenient for them, they don't necessarily want to do it. Now, that doesn't say that I don't enjoy going out to the store and playing with people in a physical sense. There's obviously 2 different sides to that. You know, you can't replicate that with an online experience, but at the same time, the ease of using it plus the cost involved. I mean, the big thing is when we're buying stuff from Cryptozoic, they will never price gouge you. You know, that's really a big thing for me. Everything's going to be controlled. It's not like they're going to release like something like Modern Masters. Hey, what's going on, the Silent Monk? It's not like they're going to release something like Modern Masters and MSRP it at something, and then all of a sudden some online vendor decides they're going to buy it all up because it's digital. So there's an infinite supply of it. So you will get it at the price that they're telling you. I understand that that's capitalism, and the stores have a perfect right to do that, but at the same time, it really turned me off to Magic last year. So moving on to the deck doctoring from there, we'll on a lighter note. Let's go ahead, and we've got Mastrfett, one of my longtime supporters, sent me this deck quite a while back, I believe. And so what he's trying to do here, from what I can tell, is he wants to play Crash the Beast quite a lot. So I'm going to go and zoom in a little bit more here so you guys can see it better. So he wants to play Crash the Beast in here, which is a little bit prohibitive. But he's got a lot of buffs for it, so whenever he plays it, for instance, if he's got Mentalist in play, he can get the draw a card effect on all of his beasts. You know, and if he swings with like 3 beasts and they all have that card draw effect, I mean, that's a lot to block for your opponent, for instance. He's playing Mastery of Time here, Howling Brave, Eldritch Dreamer is pretty obvious. So he's also got Phoenix Guard Trainer. I think this is also an interesting choice, as it's going to give all those Crash the Beasts flight. He's also playing Feather Drifting Downriver to give his troops flight, which I think is also interesting. Of course, he's got the obligatory Buccaneers in here, some Countermagic, 3 Oracle Song is Jadiim, 4 Time Ripple, the Skirmisher, Oracle Song, we already said Oracle Song, and of course he's got his Shards. And I think this is back when there was no Shards of Fate, so obviously that's going to come in here. So right off the bat, what I'm looking at here is, if we want this to happen as often as possible, then what we want to do is you want that to happen as often as possible. Hey, what's going on, Koji? So we're probably going to bump up our Mentalist and our Phoenix Guard Trainer. The great thing about this is that both of these actually buff each other. So if I have Mentalist in play, it'll buff the Phoenix Guard Trainer. Of course, it's maybe a little bit better for the Trainer to buff the Mentalist. The Mentalist is a pretty solid, decently solid body at the 2-3 point, and then the Guard Trainer is okay at the 2-2. We've also got Evasion with Eldritch Dreamer. He had the one that makes more Rhinos, and I guess that's kind of interesting, so we could try that out. Usually you want to get more card draw so we can draw the Crash the Beast more, but putting those extra Rhinos in play plus these buffs could be very interesting. I don't see the Howling Brave in this deck as being very relevant, so we're probably going to pull all of those. We'll just go ahead and pull those right now. So we're going to pull those. The Mastery of Time, maybe we might pull that. The Time Ripple, I don't see this being, like, this isn't really a tempo deck. This is more of like a combo-y type of deck. So, and this isn't really a body. So we definitely can at least take this down to 2 and buff the Buccaneer up to 2. 2 more of those. Countermagic is maybe decently relevant. Of course, our 3-point range is like massive right now, so we have to keep an eye on that as well when we're looking at building this deck. He's also got Jadiim in here, so I think we can completely cut Skirmisher out of this deck. So we're going to do that because it doesn't really do very much for anything else. It doesn't buff anything. It doesn't really get rid of anything. It kind of works against the general theme of let's play lots of troops that are going to get buffed. And it's pretty blockable. So we're actually going to dump all of our Skirmishers out of this deck. There's also no like trick buff that I can throw on it like in combat, and because my opponent's really going to want to block that Skirmisher, so I always keep that in mind as well. Oracle Song is good typically, but I think the most we can play is like one of these, and instead what we're going to end up doing is playing the card draw at the 2-point value here. So we might actually just dump these completely. Countermagic may be a little bit prohibitive, so let's go ahead and take those down to 2. We can throw 2 on the sideboard if we need to. for like Fist of Brigadon or something like that. Now we can deal with Fist pretty well because we can tempo him out with like Buccaneer, Time Ripple, and Countermagic. Between those, that's 8 answers to like Fist of Brigadon or something really big like that. Eldritch Dreamer at 3 seems okay. That should be okay. I'm not sure I want to play this Mastery of Time in here because I think I'd rather play Menacing Gralk personally. Mastery of Time is pretty good, but we're not really gonna. We got rid of our ramp elements, so let's go ahead and take it down to 1 for now. We might actually get rid of it or throw Menacing Gralk. Now it's a little less prohibitive because it's got 2 threshold instead of 3, like Gralk got nerfed to. But that seems okay, I guess. So unfortunately, we're gonna have to buff up both of these, which is just gonna expand that. We've got 19 cards in our 3-point range, which is just this curve is just ugly looking right now. It's pretty ugly. We've got 51 cards in the deck, so we can add 9 more. So we need to get some 1-drops and some 2-drops in here. We need to do something on turn 1. And I didn't feel like the turn 1 Howling Brave wasn't really a great option there. So Time Ripple actually costs 2 now. So actually this is 2 less things in our 3-point range. Let me just see if it's reading it that way. 3. So that went up to 3. So yeah, it is reading Time Ripple that way. We might actually go down Buccaneer. I want to play less of the double threshold cards, really. I mean, the biggest one is Crash the Beast, so we're probably going to be pretty heavy into double wild, to get the Crash the Beast to happen for us. Mastery of Time, like when it gets really expensive, it's less of a problem because like usually after you've drawn 5 resources, chances are 2 of them are Sapphire anyways. But like when it's exactly the same cost, or if it's close, like with Countermagic, it's going to be a lot tougher to play it. Jadiim's another one where it might be just a little bit too prohibitive to play, and I'm not sure that Jadiim really fits with this, because it's not like we're playing a lot of cards. I think I'm just going to get rid of Oracle Song. I just don't think I can play it in here. We really want to draw cards. So I think what we're going to do is we're actually going to play 2 different cards to get our combo to go. And one of them's not going to draw Crash the Beast. So let's go over here to the all cards and go to PvP, and then we're going to mark down no color, Wild, and of course Sapphire, because that's what we're playing. So we're going to get 4 Oakhenge. This is going to be a really good setup card for us. It's going to set us up really nicely by getting us those buffs right from turn 1 if we draw this in our opening hand. That's going to be really good for us. Giant Caterpillar. I have to look at what does this do? I don't think this is really going to work for us. Let's see, the Butterfly. The Cocoon is first. Yeah, started the turn Metamorph. Yes, this Butterfly is not going to work for us. This is a really good draft card though, because it makes that really big Butterfly, and there's less chance your opponent will be able to answer it properly. Plus it has Flight. Yeah, that seems pretty good. So we get the Mentalist in there. What else have we got here? Sensei. Pact of Life, Onslaught, Howling Brave, we pull, Nature's Reign. Now this we'll go ahead and just throw the obligatory 2 of these on the sideboard for now. Dandelion Sprite's not really going to do very much for us. I think it's 2 threshold now. Anyways, it's just going to be difficult for us to get to that threshold to get Spell Shield, and it doesn't really do very much. It doesn't get buffed by our things. Swirl Titan, probably not. Ronin, Mesmerize. Now Mesmerize is another one we might decide to play, but that's another 3-drop, so I don't think we can. Mimic doesn't really do a whole lot for us. I'm trying to think of what we would want to mimic in this deck of our own stuff. Maybe an Eldritch Dreamer or something, or I mean, I guess I can throw it in there and we'll see if we keep it or not. It would probably get traded for an Eldritch Dreamer if we decide to play it at all. Okay, moving down. I'm looking for it. I'm looking for the Sapphire card drawing card. Dingler. Silver Talon, I'm trying to remember if his... Let's see if their senators are... Okay, so these are 2, so that really doesn't work for us. That doesn't do very much for us. We want them both to get the buff if we're going to play it. That card, so that kind of makes it too prohibitive. You could play like maybe 1 or 2 Wild Root Dancers in here, but our 3-drop range is really just too much. It's just, we can't fit anything else in there really right now. We might play Sensei in here. Sensei would give us some card draw and a 2-point range card that can jump off things for us and help us draw into those cards that we need to get to. Dream Dance, no. Draw a card, then choose and discard a card. Yeah, I don't want to do that. Not Madness. Renlock, not so much. I'm looking for it. I forget what it's called. It's basically like a cantrip. It can be. Here it is, Peak. So this actually costs 2. So hopefully it's costed properly. But we want to play 4 of these because we want to get our combo in play. So we're kind of playing a combo-y-ish type of deck as in those 2 things. So we're going to put the 1 Gralk in here, which I feel is a lot better than, especially if we have like a board state where we have a ton of Rhinos in play. But a lot of our stuff's going to be flying anyways, hopefully. That's the plan at least, right? Let's see, Chaos Key. We need to get the Shards of Fate in here. So I think we've got enough stuff here where we can pare it down, and we should have it pretty actually good to go, pretty quick, pretty short order actually tonight. So let's get the Shards of Fate. There it is. We need to put 4 of these in. So let's pop over to the deck. So these Oakhenge, yeah, that seems pretty good. We got 68 cards. We have to pull 8 cards from here. So Mastery of Time is decent. I just don't like it in an open board state. I'd rather have the body of the Gralk in play. So I think I'm just going to go ahead and pull it, even though it's less prohibitive. And I guess it could win games if I play it. I think I'm going to pull that. I'm going to go ahead and go down to maybe 1 Eldritch Dreamer, and we're gonna put the one where it makes Rhinos in play. Okay, so is anyone else stuttering? Are you stuttering, Mastrfett, as I'm putting together this deck for you? Also, let me know, Mastrfett, if I'm not going in the right direction with this deck that you want me to. I think we're gonna take Jadiim down to 1 too, just to smooth out our draws. We're going to take our resources down by 4 to see what we need left. So this will put us at 24. We might actually be able to go with 23 resources on this. In fact, I think that we can. Yeah, I think we can go down to 23 resources right now with this deck and be perfectly fine. And this is smoothed out. You can see our curve got a lot better after we added a lot of those other cards. So it's not just a video, it's everything. Oh, okay. Oh, well, I will be Mastrfett. If you have to restart, don't feel too bad, because I will be posting this on YouTube. Usually I get it out by the end of the weekend, so so you can come back and you won't miss that much. Or if you have a separate computer, I guess you could start that up. But I think that we're pretty much there already on the deck. We've got it down to 60. Our curve looks really good. We just need to count the icons on the cards and make sure our resources are set properly. I feel confident that we can play this with 23 resources, and I think that it'll do what we need it to do. So basically the idea is we're going to use Oakhenge Ceremony or Peak to set us up by getting Mentalist and Phoenix Guard Trainer in play, and either one of those things will get us to those things. Oakhenge Ceremony is not going to get us Crash Beast, but after we get either one of these guys or both of these guys in play, then we're going to basically be using Peak to just troll through our deck to look for Crash Beast and play Crash Beast as much as possible. That's the basic idea here, and then hopefully you know, we'll have enough stuff where it'll be too overwhelming for our opponent to deal with by playing lots of those Crash Beasts. I mean, if you look at what we've got, we've actually got like 12 cantrips in this deck, because you can count Oakhenge as a cantrip. You can count Sensei as a cantrip, and you can count Peak as a cantrip. You're only getting one card with each one of them, but it should, I mean, I control through, let's just say that peak, typically I'm going to have between 2 and 4 Sapphire Shards in play for peak. And the other thing is so you're going to need to remember when you're playing this deck that once you have 2 Wild Shards in play, you every other shard, if you have a choice with Shards of Fate, you're going to want it to be Sapphire to maximize peak, how much stuff you're peaking at. So yeah, I know this is pretty old now, Mastrfett, and that's kind of like the nature of the beast, because I can only really review like one deck a week. Once I start getting overwhelmed with decks, then I'm going to probably start picking and choosing, but I haven't gotten there yet, so I still have a queue with decks in the queue. But yeah, and plus I had to take a couple of weeks off during the Christmas holidays. I had family stuff going on, so it obviously looks a lot better than what it did before you had access to Oakhenge Ceremony and Peak. I'm not sure how amazing this deck is going to be, but it's got some interesting things going on, so it would be interesting to see it in play, and so I might just put this together later after I do my tournament game. Let's just take a minute. We've got plenty of time on the clock here to finish out the episode. If you guys have questions for me or anything, you can go ahead and shoot those questions at any time, but I'm just going to go ahead and add some more stuff to his sideboard or his reserves. And we'll just go back to all cards and just throw some things on there for his reserves that a lot of it's going to be the typical things I would throw onto decks like this. Okay, so we don't need to have that, so I can see all the cards. So Manti, Elder Druid, we could probably put one of these safely. Incantation of Ascendance is good, but we aren't drawing a lot of cards, so that doesn't really fit in this deck very well. Arcane Shield might be useful if our opponent has a lot of removal, so because we want to make sure our buffed guys stay in place. So we could probably put like maybe 1 or 2 of these on the sideboard, on the reserves, as it were. We've already got Nature's Rain on the sideboard, on the reserves. Actually, I need to pull this. We need to put it on reserves. Reserves. There we go. You click on the icon and it turns white, and that means you're in the reserves area. Moving down here, Squirrel Titan. I feel like I could play a Squirrel Titan and it would just be a big surprise for my opponent because it is removal, like straight up removal. It's pretty expensive. I don't know. You could probably play a Singleton if you wanted to in your sideboard. It would be a funny surprise for your opponent. I don't know that how often you actually get to play it, but then you can bounce it with a lot of things. So that's maybe a different deck type altogether. It's basically playing like 4 Squirrel Titan, some ramp elements, and then a bunch of bounce. And you can replay your Squirrel Titans and kill things with them, but I don't think that's going to be that viable, really. Mesmerize is another one we can put in the sideboard, maybe 2 of those. Maybe a third Eldritch Dreamer. Of course, we're throwing the Rhino thing on there, so you could actually, if you felt like you needed card draw for some reason, you could throw maybe a card draw gem in your sideboard, or maybe put 2 of these on a sideboard with a card draw gem, or just mix and match. Let's see what else. Survival of the Fittest could be useful as removal. We should have a lot of stuff in place. So I'm saving this on my account, and I will post a link to it to you tonight, Mastrfett, so you can access it. It's completely public, and everyone else can look at this as well. And typically what I do after I'm done with these and I post them out on YouTube is I post the link to the deck list on YouTube, and so if you look below, once this goes on YouTube, it will have the deck list link there, so I can link it, and then what you can do is copy it to your profile, and then you can fiddle with it all you want. You won't be able to fiddle with my version of it, though. Battle Beetle's another one that's kind of maybe a little bit too expensive to throw on a sideboard effectively. We're running 2 Time Ripple. I guess if you wanted to, you could run like maybe 1 more of these, a 3rd one in the sideboard. You could run Ancestors Chosen, I guess. I'm not sure why you would, though. It seems to be like a little bit counterintuitive to this deck. It's a nice turn 1 card, I guess, versus some decks. keep going, keep going. Of course, we've got the extra counter magic. We're definitely going to want those extra counter magic on the sideboard. We already put them there. It'd be funny if in the future they allow us to like side in like cards that change our champion or something. Now that would be interesting. Side in this card into your deck, and then like basically when you play it, it changes your champion. Awesome. That would be freaking awesome. I'm looking for it. I'm not seeing it. Okay, you could put Sapphire Shard, would be a decent sideboard card as well. Another card you could put in there for removal if you felt like you needed that specific type of removal. It's nice for those quick things. You gotta think about what you're weak against though as well. Wild Growth is kind of counterintuitive because it throws itself back into the deck. I really hope that in the future we get another Wild Growth that doesn't do that. I would really prefer to have Wild Growth that doesn't get shuffled in, because there's usually a lot other better things I want to get shuffled into the deck. Glimmerglen Witch is another great one, especially with all the bounce we've got in this deck. So we could play 2 to 4 of these. I like to play 4 because I feel like it's a really good answer to a lot of the mono ruby decks that are out there. Of course, we haven't seen a lot of mono ruby being played lately, but you know, I like to be prepared for mono ruby because I know that it's out there. Typically, when I go to a tournament setting, I know at least 2 or 3 people out of like 16 are playing mono ruby aggro, because it's typically the cheapest deck to build, even if you don't have the bombs for it, and it's efficient and effective. Could also play a Thunderbird. This seems like a better card than playing if you wanted a threat, an early threat. Typically, I don't think you want the Ancestor Chosen. You want Thunderbird. Now, the 2 threshold is going to be a little bit prohibitive, so maybe just throw like 2 of these on the sideboard. You got plenty of space in that 2-point range to play that, though. Of course, we already have Peak. Another Gralk, always a good idea in case you're running against the mono wild or something. And Gralk is just going to own that matchup up a lot of times. Hunting Cap's not going to do very much. Obligatory like Singleton Chaos Key, which is the answer for all of life's worries in this game. And that's pretty much all the cards we could try to put on our sideboard, I think, that are currently available to us. I guess you could also, in this deck, if you wanted to, you could run main deck Bottle Vitae, which is also going to help you draw through the deck, but Bottle Vitae has kind of dropped off and it's not seeing as much play. It depends on how comfortable you are with what's going on in your deck to begin with and how much card draw you feel like you need and to get to these combos and different things. But I feel like the quality cards we've got in the deck are a good place to be at anyways. For some reason I have 61 cards in my deck. Okay, this guy went on. He should be on the sideboard, not in the deck. There we go. Okay, so we've got 22 cards to pare down on our sideboard, or our reserves, as it were. It just depends on what we're most afraid of as far as market share in the metagame right now. So for control matchups, what's our game plan going into a control matchup? Probably Countermagic. So we've got the 2 Countermagic. That's probably the main thing we're going to side in there. Maybe a Chaos Key. Maybe Mesmerize or something. So versus like the mono wild fist deck, we're going to probably side in Mesmerize. Maybe Manti Elder Druid. Survival of Fittest is not looking as good as it did when I first put it in here. Versus the mono ruby, I feel like Glimmerglen Witch is probably all we need, so actually that can probably get rid of. It means we can probably get rid of these Sapphire Charges. And I think Survival of the Fittest doesn't really fit this deck very well. So we're going to pull that. We've got more efficient removal where we don't have to worry about troops being in play, so we're not going to play that. I feel like that card's probably best suited for the mono wild type of deck. So we're already down to 18 cards. We only need to get rid of like 3 more. So we could probably go down to like 1 Arcane Shield. That probably is probably a pretty good thing. Thunderbird's really clunky to play. It's a nice early threat, but it doesn't really, like, does it counter strategies? I mean, what strategy am I countering with this? Maybe mono wild. I guess it's really strong against Mono Wild. Yeah, this is probably one of your strongest cards versus that Mono Wild matchup. So I guess it depends on how afraid you feel like you are versus Mono Wild. But you've got a lot of other things in here that do somewhat similar things as well, like Mesmerize. You got Time Ripple. Okay, thanks for sending me that message, Mastrfett. Did you want me to look at it right now for a minute, or is it this one, or is it something completely different? Because we're running up against time. I'll probably call it pretty soon. So our 3-point range sucks pretty bad. We already know that we don't want to put too much stuff in there, and so siding into our 3-point range probably makes it so it's tougher to put this Glimmerglen Witch. So we'll go down to 3 of those. 16 cards. We need to get rid of one more. Probably a Thunderbird. It's really good against Mono Wild, but I feel like we're good enough without it. Actually, we need to do our mana base really quick. Our resource base, as it were. So we're going to go ahead. Okay, if it's completely different, if you want me to take a look at it, if you want me to put it on my show, let me know. But if not, you know, I can usually, like, I had someone that sent me, like, that's the other thing, like, for all of you guys, if you don't want me to put your deck on the show, but you still want advice, I can message you back, but it's going to be like really quick, like, glances at what's going on. So I won't actually be talking through it like I am now. I just basically went through and marked all the cards that I felt like didn't belong in there, or different options. I didn't rebuild the whole deck. So you can send your decks to my Twitch. You can send them to me on Twitch, is what a lot of people do. You can also send them through YouTube. You can message me on my Google Plus account. You could message me a link on Twitter, and I'll see it, and I'll record it and throw it somewhere. And you know, you guys are always welcome to message me decks, and I'll take a look at them. And it's good if you tell me kind of like where you're going with the deck, because otherwise I'm going to go in the direction that I see fit, and so that sometimes means that I'm going to build a deck that is similar to one that I already play with. So if there's specific cards that you really, really want to see played in that deck, or a specific concept, the concept is the main thing that I'd want to see you trying to get across with your deck. Like the concept on this one is Mentalist plus Guard Trainer plus anything else equals nice buffs. So yeah, and I think that this deck actually is going to be okay. I'm not sure how viable it's going to be in the competitive game, but it looks decent. Not super amazing compared to some of the other things that are out there. Let's go ahead and do our resource thing, and then I'm going to close out the show. Probably tell my kids some stories, and then I'll be on in a couple of minutes to do. I'll be on to do my tournament games. And I forget who I'm playing against. I always forget. I got like no memory left. I'm getting old. You're lucky I can do this. Okay, so what I do is I count icons. So we've got 4 icons with Ceremony. So that we've got 4 of these cards, so that's another 8, so that's 12. 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. So we've got 19 wild icons that are in our deck. Now we're going to count up all the sapphire icons, and it's looking like a lot more actually. So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. So we've got 30 icons in the sapphire range. So this actually might tell us that maybe we should dump Gralk for Jadiim or something to that effect, or if we were considering making some other choices just to smooth out the curve. Again, until we get something more than just Shards of Fate, until we get another resource that can be both Sapphire and Wild, or a dual resource as it were, playing like with this kind of a split is the gulf is about 11 icons, which I don't especially like. I'd like them to be a lot closer. Like I'd like to have maybe 24, 25 wild icons and maybe like 27 sapphire icons, something like that. So let's also look at what do we really need to play on turn 1. Oakhenge is really important for us to play on turn 1, so we really can't go down too far on the wild, but we know that we have a lot of double threshold Sapphire cards in this deck. So probably what's going to end up happening is we've got this 10-9 split, where we're just going to reverse that, and it's going to be a 9-10 split. It's really important for us to draw these Sapphire Shards, but we're you know, we don't have as many wild things to draw, and luckily the only thing that's really bad in here is the Crash of Beasts for the double threshold. So this might be a little bit clunky to play. If you count the Shards of Fate, so you add 4, we've got 13 wild shards in this deck and 14 Sapphire Shards in this deck. You know, even though we're only playing 23 resources. I mean, that's the actual amount of different shards we have available to us when we draw Shards of Fate, plus all the rest of these other shards. So it's not too bad, but it might be a little bit clunky, a little bit prohibitive, and so it's worthwhile to maybe, if you're going to refine this deck. And again, what I'm doing is always a quick glance at these decks, working them out to get a basic concept down, but actually working a deck for a couple of weeks, trying different things out, changing things out is very, very important. So don't ever minimize that. Just because I put this deck down like this doesn't mean that this is gospel. It just means that these are the general concepts, and we got our mana curve, and we got all the shards in the deck, so it should work properly. But if we end up like finding that like Jadiim or Menacing Gralk were maybe a little bit too ambitious, we could remove them and do a lot of other things. Or for instance, maybe like we could remove both of those and play like 2 more Countermagic in the main deck or other things. So always be looking at the deck and assessing it. It should never really be complete from week to week, and you should always be tailoring it to what you perceive the metagame to be, especially when you're going into a major tournament. So I'm just going to recap what we talked about tonight. We talked about the patch 821, which brought us the wonderful sealed deck with those 6 packs of 40 card decks, which we can play against each other. Hopefully we'll get to see some games tonight if I get to play some of those on that type of format. We're having some problems with that earlier, but that's just the way things go when new things are implemented. Basically everyone gets excited, people show up, and then it's just too much for the system to handle. Right, and that's another thing that Irish Batusi is pointing out with the thing, is that when it is that a new set comes out, that archetype this deck, for instance, would still remain, but it might add cards, add better cards that I would remove other less good cards from this deck. Going through the rest of this, talked about my foray into a little bit of forum trolling, talked about some brick and mortar stores, and then some different things about different chat clients within some of these different different online card games like Hex. And then we did our deck doctor, and I think we got a pretty good deck concept going for Mastrfett with this Flying Rhinos, and I will go ahead and post that right now into the chat so people can take a look at it. And other than that, this is Aaron Squire signing off, saying God bless you and your families, and try not to reach too much out there.